We are 50 days until the start of the NFL season. I found this interesting from the NFL, who decided to put on these faces. No Patrick Mahomes. I got Jaden Daniels front and center with Lamar and Josh Allen behind him. Justin Jefferson front and center as well. Where is Patrick Mahomes? Is he being overlooked a little bit? We've got the Eagles and Cowboys kicking things off 50 nights from tonight. Thursday, September the 4th. Eagles, the defending champs, nearly a touchdown favorite as of now. That division has had 20 straight seasons without a repeat champ. Eagles are favored to get it done this season. We will see. Here are the must-watch Week 1 games. Chiefs, Chargers, Brazil. That's a standalone Friday game. We've got a great one on Sunday afternoon. Lions and Packers in the NFC North. Ravens, Bills, the two favorites in the AFC right now on Sunday night. And Vikings, Bears wrap things up on Monday Night Football. Let's bring in Evan Washburn here to talk about some of these teams and some of the best in football. He's going to be going all around the training camps in just a little bit. Let's start with that Cowboys-Eagles opener. Eagles dominated the Cowboys last season. Eagles are the defending champs. But they've lost a lot defensively in the trenches, in the secondary. What kind of questions do you have about that reworked defense?
I don't have many in terms of whether or not they're going to be productive and successful, because I have belief in, first of all, Vic Fangio and his ability to scheme up a quality defense despite some personnel overhaul, as you mentioned. And then there's Howie Roseman. Based off of their contractual situations on the offensive side of the ball, they couldn't retool through free agency as they have in years past, but he's just done such a nice job drafting, Chris, and refilling holes, especially across that defensive line. That was an area of strength, even though they lost some pieces during free agency. So I think that defense will be top 10, in that top 10 to 15 range once again. Maybe not as strong as they were a year ago, but I think just what they have going offensively and the ability to retain all the talent they have on that side of the ball over the last few years puts them in a great position to try and repeat. And as we know, that's as challenging as there is in sports, especially in the NFL. It doesn't happen often. And I think that's going to be Philadelphia's biggest hurdle, not defensive losses, but how do they re-engage the mentality necessary to make another run at a Lombardi.
Evan is about to re-engage here and go on his training camp tour. He's going to be hitting about 10 different training camps over the course of the next couple of weeks. Here you see the official tour, which will begin July the 25th with the Buffalo Bills. That's next weekend, and then pretty much touring the northeastern half of the country and some of the Midwest teams as well. Let's start with the Ravens and the Bills. These are two teams that you're going to be hitting. You'll be calling preseason games for the Ravens. You live there in the area. These teams are the favorites right now in the AFC, even though the AFC has basically gone through Arrowhead for the better part of the last decade. What do you make of these teams being the odds-on favorites right now in the AFC?
Well, first of all, that's a disturbing graphic with my head littered across the great United States, but I appreciate laying out my schedule here for the next couple weeks. Look, I love where we are right now, not just in the NFL in general in terms of storylines, but specific to your question about the AFC. And really, I look at three teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore, as you mentioned. But then I also put Cincinnati still in the picture, despite what was an odd year a year ago. I have Houston in the picture, and then maybe Pittsburgh looming. To me, it's like any great series that we watch, whether you're a Succession fan, you want to go Game of Thrones, The Wire, if you want to go back a few years, where we're just so invested in the characters in this story. And that's how I feel about Buffalo and Baltimore. And then you put in Kansas City. I mean, each year it ends up being some version of the three of them, obviously having to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid in Kansas City. I don't see why that would be any different this year. I think there might be a new member to this story, to this series, if you will. It could be Cincinnati, it could be Pittsburgh, Houston, maybe somebody looming there in the AFC ready to make a run. But when I look at Buffalo and then Baltimore, as we lay out some of the statistical numbers stars and their matchups. It's just the fact that they've been able to deal with a year that was a basic mini rebuild within one season that saw them go to an AFC championship game. They're better this year, Chris, than they were a year ago on paper. So much has to happen on the field, but that puts them in a great position. Similarly, Baltimore, they didn't have to really retool. They didn't lose a lot. They lost a couple guys here and there, but they're able to tweak their roster through free agency. They had a great draft, it would appear. So they're going to be primed and ready. But it's about making that play, that catch. If you're Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson late in Buffalo, or if you're the Bills making that play late in Arrowhead, you need to advance to a Super Bowl finally.
The last 3 MVP winners, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, going head-to-head week 1. And then there's Patrick Mahomes. And the Chiefs just missed out on that three-peat last year, but they have finished their season in the Super Bowl 5 of the last 6 seasons. They will begin this season in Brazil against the Chargers on a Friday. Do you think that they're going to be embracing the fact that instead of answering questions about a three-peat a year ago, that maybe they're answering more questions about, is this the backside of the dynasty? Are you guys coming down a bit?
It's a dynasty for sure, and there are ebbs and flows within that dynasty. I think that the New England Patriots provided us with such a quality blueprint as to what you have to navigate in terms of having an all-time quarterback, an all-time head coach, but then the fluctuation around them. And we've already seen Brett Veach, the GM, navigate this really well. We still have Kelsey for another year. Chris Jones is back. They've got a lot of their key pieces. The way I see Kansas City, it's similar to Buffalo. I think they're better this year based off of health. Rashee Rice, I know he may have some situations off the field to work through and how that will impact his availability. But remember, he got injured early against the Chargers a year ago. Marquise Hollywood Brown, I don't think he's a 1. He might not even be a 2, but he's a high-end 3. So I think those guys being active, available. Xavier Worthy, another year in that system. They seem to be uber confident in what he can provide. I think, Chris, we might see a return to the Kansas City Chiefs of the early days of the Mahomes run here with Tyreek Hill, where they're streaking down the field. Kelsey's making plays over the middle. I think Mahomes, whether it be physically, he looks great after an offseason, really focused on getting primed and ready for this year, but also mentally. I mean, the way that year ended, despite how impressive it was up until that Super Bowl, for that type of competitor, we know this, that will ignite something special in a player of his caliber. And that's what I expect to see from Mahomes in Kansas City.
Now heading into his age 30 season and playing the Chargers, a team, maybe they're a team that's going to be a factor in the AFC. A couple of years ago, Evan, we were sitting here, we were talking all about the New York Jets and how they won the offseason. They got Aaron Rodgers. We know how that worked out for them over the course of 2 years. They're opening up against the Steelers, who are in a similar situation with Rodgers and then some of the other veteran stars that they've added. You mentioned the Steelers as maybe a team that could compete. Do you think they're better equipped to handle the expectations than the Jets were?
I do. I just think that they have a strong culture, and that word gets thrown around, but it's real in Pittsburgh. When you go to that building, you meet with Mike Tomlin, you spend time around the Rooney family and what they've built there over their generations of running that organization. And then within that roster, whether it's Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and I think what's nice for Pittsburgh when it comes to the Aaron Rodgers relationship that New York didn't have was they're not going to ask him to lead them the way that the Jets wanted. And Aaron, to be fair, appeared wanted to lead that organization, that team. He wanted it on his shoulders. He was ready to make a statement with that group and make a run. Didn't go the way he planned, both on the field with his Achilles and then whether it was with the coaching staff. I think this is a much more manageable situation for a future Hall of Famer in possibly the last year of his career. He just needs to make a few plays over the course of a game, often late, to help them win it. He does not have to carry the load over the course of 4 quarters or a 17-game season and then into the playoffs. And I do think even at his age, at 41, 21 years in the league, Aaron Rodgers is plenty capable of doing that. And that's what makes Pittsburgh exciting right now. And then you throw in the fact they have DK Metcalf and they go make a run for Jalen Ramsey. I made the point on HQ yesterday. All in is thrown around, much like the term culture, probably too much. But there's no doubt that right now, Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, that whole group are all in on this year and what they can do.
That is going to be one of the games to highlight our early slate, week 1 on CBS. The late slate on CBS, highlighted by Lions at Packers. How do you think the Lions are going to fare now that they've had to replace both of their great coordinators?
It's such a great point, Chris. I'm so excited to get to Detroit. I think it's number 2 stop. We can go back to that big headshot map, see my schedule. Number 2 stop on the tour, because serious brain drain there with the Lions after last season. And this happens when you're successful. Other teams want to poach your coordinators to be head coaches, and then those coordinators that become head coaches bring along positional coaches and elevate them. So you have to deal with not just the loss of your coordinators, but they lost 6 positional coaches. They ended up hiring 10 new coaches. Their roster's still loaded. They didn't lose anything other than Frank Ragnow, which is a big loss in that area on the cross that offensive line. But outside of that, I mean, they're rolling it right back. But now it's about building chemistry on the fly and building it quickly. I mean, as you look at some of the situations here in the past where this has been the case, and I think most recently to that Eagles season when they made that run to the Super Bowl, ended up losing to Kansas City, but then they lose both coordinators, and that next year looked very different. So I'm not saying that's the case for John Morton and Kelvin Shepard and what they're going to do in their respective positions with the Lions, but specific to the offense, that's where all eyes are going to be, because they were so explosive, dynamic, creative, exciting. And that's a lot for John Morton to step into as a first-time play caller with Jared Goff and the rest of those weapons on the outside and in the run game.
And of course, the Bears are hoping that Ben Johnson brings that to Chicago and helps Caleb Williams with that, as the Bears and Vikings make up what could be the best division in football. All those teams have a win total of 8.5 and higher. This is the matchup that will conclude week 1 on Monday Night Football. How are the Bears going to try with this new staff to get the most out of Caleb Williams?
They've given him everything necessary in year 2. You mentioned Ben Johnson coming in. I think more importantly, protection. Joe Thuney from the Chiefs, signed him in free agency. Jonah Jackson from the LA Rams. Those 2 pieces, I think, really could provide some stability and allow Caleb Williams to not be running for his life, obviously, but also take in and run an offense that Ben Johnson will make palatable for Caleb Williams. I think that's one of the things that strikes me when you watch what Ben Johnson can do as a play caller and leader of an offense, even though now he's got to be tasked with leading the entire team, and that can't be overlooked. But he recognizes the strength of his players, specific to quarterback, what he did with Jared Goff in and around him, and he highlights it. There's not necessarily a Ben Johnson scheme that everyone has to fit into. So I think they're just going to be in such a better place there. And if Caleb has time and he has command of that offense and they coach him well, which it feels like at times last year was lacking, or at least the connection or chemistry or communication wasn't there, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But like anything, and it goes to the other side of Ben Johnson's previous year, you can't rush chemistry. So just because you're throwing in 2 quality pieces, the offensive line and a new head coach, play caller, that all want the right things to happen, you do have to have some time on task for it to exist. I would say Minnesota's ahead of them in that practice, but they also have to break in a new quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, who's going to have the weight of the world on his shoulders, because I look at Minnesota, outside of the question mark at that position, as an absolute contender, not just for the NFC North, but for a Super Bowl run as well.
I know you're going to be visiting the Vikings at training camp in a couple of weeks, as well as Evan Washburn hits about 10 different spots. Minnesota, July the 29th.